Ma'am, step aside.
Now. The officer's voice sliced through the noise of the airport terminal. Travelers froze mid-step, clutching boarding passes, bags dangling from their hands, as a young woman in plain fatigues was suddenly surrounded. Her wrists were yanked into cuffs, her expression unreadable, eyes lowered, jaw clenched, shoulders rigid with quiet tension. Before we move further into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear. Let's dive in. The K9 unit barked once, nose pressed against her duffel bag. One officer pulled the bag onto the inspection table, unzipped it, and drew out a black case. It was heavy, scarred from travel, the kind of case that carried secrets. The officer snapped it open, gasps erupted instantly. Inside, rows of handguns gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, laid out like a weapon dealer's showcase. "What is this?" one officer demanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. "You're carrying an arsenal through an airport." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Passengers leaned closer, phones raised, some whispering in shock, others smirking with suspicion. "She's dangerous. She's smuggling." "Who even is she?" The young woman didn't answer. She simply stood cuffed, silent, bearing the weight of their judgment. The officers grew more frantic, muttering into radios, exchanging grim looks. The K9 sniffed again, tail twitching, confirming their worst fears. Cameras flashed, strangers whispered louder, and the young woman's silence only fueled their assumptions. Then, cutting through the murmurs, came a voice, low, commanding, unshakable. "Release her, now!" The crowd turned. Walking toward the scene was a man in a decorated military uniform, his chest heavy with medals, his stride purposeful, every step radiating authority. A general. The officers straightened instantly, their postures snapping into discipline, but their faces betrayed confusion. "Sir," the lead officer stammered, we found this case in her bag. Weapons, multiple, You thought wrong." The general's words landed like thunder. He glanced at the woman, whose chin finally lifted. Though her face bore exhaustion, her eyes carried quiet defiance. "This soldier," the general declared, his voice carrying across the terminal, "is returning from a special assignment. Those aren't smuggled weapons. They're decommissioned sidearms, transported under full military clearance. Each one belonged to a fallen soldier. She is delivering them to a memorial." The crowd
Ma'am,
gasped
step
again,
aside.
but this time it was not fear. It was shame. The general stepped to the table, resting his hand gently on the case. His tone softened, but every word cut deep. "These aren't tools of crime. They are relics of
Yes, ma'am.
sacrifice. Every pistol in this case belonged to someone who never came home. And this woman carried them across borders, across danger, to make sure their stories live on." The officer holding her arm loosened his grip. His face flushed red, but the general's glare only sharpened. "Do you know what you've done?" he barked. "You cuffed a soldier for honoring the dead. You mocked her silence with your suspicion." The young woman swallowed hard, holding her composure. Her silence wasn't guilt, it was burden. She had carried not only weapons, but memories. She had carried a nation's ghosts. "Take off those cuffs," the general ordered. Keys rattled, locks clicked, and the handcuffs fell away. The woman rubbed her wrists, her eyes wet, though she refused to cry. "Lift your head, soldier," the general said softly. "You have nothing to bow for. You carried a nation's memory today." Her eyes met his, and for the first time a flicker of pride broke through her fatigue. Around them the crowd shifted, then, one by one, strangers began to clap. First softly, then louder, until the entire terminal thundered with applause. Those who had whispered earlier now lowered their phones, ashamed of their own quick judgment. The officers stood frozen, their shame visible. One muttered an apology, but the general cut him off with a curt gesture. "Not to me, to her. She's the reason you even wear that badge freely." The officer turned, his voice unsteady. I'm sorry, ma'am. We shouldn't have assumed." Her reply was calm, steady, but sharp as glass. "Next time, remember that not everything is what it seems. Some of us carry more than you'll ever know." She closed the weapons case, her movements careful, almost reverent, as though sealing away not guns, but memories. The general nodded, then guided her forward. The crowd parted in silence, respect heavy in the air. And though the clapping slowed, its echo followed her down the terminal. Not for scandal, not for crime, but for the honor she had carried in silence. Because appearances can deceive, but sacrifice tells the truth. Before judging someone's burden, remember, you don't know what they've carried or who they've carried it for. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button and drop a karma in the comments below.